Good afternoon. Boa tarde. Okay. Our next speaker doesn't need me to introduce him, but anyway, I have here some text that I will read about Jori. So Jori Ringman, that is the Director General of CEPI since June 2019. Previously, he was Deputy Director General and responsible for issues related to sustainability, environmental, and consumer protection, with particular concern for packaging and food contact. Since he joined CEPI in 2005, he has been advancing and exploring circular, low-carbon bioeconomy in the sector. Prior to 2005, he was a civil servant at the European Commission and a political advisor in the European Parliament. Mr. Ringman has a background in economics and business management and broad experience in communications, public administration, and politics. He also holds a Master of Science degree in environmental decision making. So the next 40 minutes we will have here a speech of Mr. Jori about successes, opportunities, and challenges in the European bioeconomy moving to the next level. Please, Jori.
So the previous speaker, before we started this session, set the bar very high by speaking Portuguese, although it's not the language we master, but boa tarde, anyhow. Always a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation this time again. I was actually organizing some training for the CEPI team for public speaking, and the training lady said that it would be good to use some of your old recordings to show the good and the bad examples, and I found a recording of me last time in Tecnicelpa, and I gave that, but I also was curious to see what I had said a few years ago, and it was extremely bleak and negative. I was talking about the Green Deal. And I thought, well, this time I have to give something a bit more positive, because also the situation around the industry has become much more serious. So I can't be here to say that it's all gloom and doom. And maybe it's good to remind people when we talk about the Green Deal. So I don't know if everybody knows about the European Green Deal, but it's a huge package of regulation that is supposed to advance the sustainability of the European economy as a whole, with very ambitious targets, with very ambitious timeframes. And that's why it's so difficult. But maybe it's good to remind people that we are not as such intrinsically against the Green Deal. It's actually something that is quite aligned as a goal with our industry. So bio-based, renewable, recyclable, low carbon, it's actually everything that we can recognize in our industry. So as a goal, we do support it, but what we don't like and what we fear is the unintended consequences. In particular, if you rush, then the risk of unintended consequences goes even further. And one of the unintended consequences in the Green Deal is that it's green, but actually it looks very red because it's covered with red tape. And this red tape is enormous. Much of what has been agreed and politically and legally set in stone past 5 years is not even implemented yet. So you haven't even seen all of it yet. But I can promise it's more than you expect. These words are not mine. They are the gentleman called Mario Draghi, who wrote the report a year ago about the competitiveness of European economy. And he's been very consistent saying that we have to do something about that. I noticed also that last week there was a letter by 19 prime ministers of the European Union member countries writing to the Commission to say that your level of ambition for cutting this red tape is not enough. The Portuguese prime minister was one of the 19 who wrote that letter. So there's understanding that something has to be done, but it's easier said than done, because then really doing the proper work in looking what is the red tape that is not really needed for the goals without touching the ambitious goals is not easy. When at least CEPI talks about or removing the red tape, we are not talking about deregulation or getting to a wild west where companies do whatever they want to do. That's not the goal. It's just to try to reduce the micromanagement that is excessive in burden. Another nice word that Mr. Draghi used here is the word harmonization, and that's another point of clarification maybe, that when we say that we need to simplify the EU regulation, we don't actually call for less Europe. We could still ask for more Europe for harmonizing and getting full benefits of the EU internal market. Internal market is an old idea, about 30 years, but it's far from being finished. And there was another part of the Draghi report that he referred to, this International Monetary Fund study, saying that in EU, all the obstacles that companies selling from Portugal to Sweden or Germany to France, they amount to obstacles that would be worth 44% tariffs if you want to measure it that way. We don't need to ask Mr. Trump to cause trouble for our businesses. We are doing it ourselves. There are no tariffs, of course, but it's this non-tariff barriers that we making trading between countries very difficult. And it's like last session there was talk about food contact materials. So if you produce packaging for food, then you are in this category where it's extremely difficult to sell from one EU country to another country. So we have to cut red tape. We may not want to ask for reducing the ambition of the Green Deal, but we also need still more Europe without that bureaucracy. Well, we have been asking that for a while now, and we have been using many platforms for that. So, of course, like any industry sector, we have had direct bilateral contacts with the Commission here on the bottom of this graph. Then we set up already 4 years ago a very ambitious coalition, which is largest ever coalition in our sector, with over 20 trade associations from the forest-based industries, asking for abilities for having bioeconomy back on the agenda and scaling up our production. It's not only about the innovations, it's also the fantastic startups and new ideas we have, but we still have potential also scaling up the classic pulp and paper industry, where we can substitute fossil materials with that. That has been successful, and I'll come back to that because the bioeconomy is now back on the agenda. It's actually very centrally there. And then together with all the other heavy industries, we were joining forces to get a year ago to this Antwerp Industrial Summit to say that, look, industry is in general dying in Europe, and you must not let that happen. So what we did, we had 73 CEOs in the room from all the sectors, 17 key sectors, calling President von der Leyen before the European elections last year to say that, look, competitiveness must come central to your next commission. She was there. She was listening to us. In this picture, I was sitting in a very good position in that meeting because I had Mrs. von der Leyen to my left and then Marco Eikelenboom, who's currently the CEPI chairman, just opposite of me, so I was able to snatch this picture where Marco was talking about the needs that we have, and Mrs. von der Leyen at least looks like she's listening. And I think she was listening. Because before elections, politicians tend to listen. That was maybe too easy. By the elections, we had increased the number of signatories to 1,311. And then we got this Draghi report I was talking about from Mrs. von der Leyen. So that was the first signal that she was actually listening. She commissioned the work to Mr. Draghi to say that, well, tell me what's wrong. And then we had this year in February the second summit where there were 400 CEOs in the room saying basically the same messages, but maybe adding a bit to the urgency, saying that we are actually having really serious situation. And then just before the meeting started, 1 hour before, Mrs. von der Leyen, with the Commission of the European Commission, announced the European Clean Industrial Deal. So that was her response. It's all very good. It's great to hear that the politicians have changed the language, so they talk about the right things. What we are still, of course, critically looking after is there action? One key achievement for us was that in this clean industrial deal, bioeconomy is one of the 5 strategic sectors. And that's also quite a novel thing. We have been pushing for bioeconomy for a long time, but there are these classic sectors that are always, whatever the Commission does, they always remember to talk about chemicals and steel. Those are like the basic industries that will never be forgotten. It's probably like somebody said that all industries are equal, but some are more equal than others. And now, luckily, we are in this some industry sectors as a bioeconomy. And these words, again, are not my words. It's from the Clean Industrial Deal, and they talk exactly what we were asking for. The opportunities to scale up, to grow the business, to be the growth engine for EU economy. In a mature economy like EU, it's very difficult to find growth unless you have new technologies. Bioeconomy is one such element that we can introduce that could develop new growth. But not only that. So we now believe that there would be on the 12th of November, so roughly 2 weeks from now, the new bioeconomy strategy that would answer some questions on how we can scale up, how we can secure raw materials for us, so availability of biomass for all this, and then many other questions. But not only that, so bioeconomy, one of the 5 key sectors, but also pulp and paper industry as a key pillar of the bioeconomy. And this is also something that we are quite happy, but I would almost say that we are surprised to be happy about it, because again, for many years, we were not really considered to be a key sector in the EU. And we are now working with the European Commission key 4 departments, so energy, climate change, environment, and industry, to have an action plan for the pulp and paper industry. So that's something that we expect early next year, and that should then take it more concrete action level on what we can expect and what we can ask the Commission to do for us. And that's really new. The second part of my presentation, I would like to give an overview of a bit of the opportunities in EU funding, in particular for research, development, and innovation. CEPI is working in many areas where the innovation activities are relevant, and you see in this rather confusing, but hopefully if you look at it for a moment, nevertheless clear enough picture, what we can offer as CEPI for research, innovation, and development. There's first of all these 2 forums that are having monthly or regular meetings online, where we scout new opportunities, new technologies, new innovations that are not yet applied in our sector but could be used. The older one since 2000 is on energy efficiency and decarbonization. And it's very nice because there are people who we are not used to talk to giving solutions, and then our experts online are grilling them and roasting and asking that, have you thought about this? How would it be integrated in our processes and so on? And then we do now the similar thing for the processes and products, because in the chemical regulation there's increasing concern about any unwanted chemicals that may be in our products, or for that matter in our effluents as well. And we are trying to find solutions to cleaning the process, so having kind of kidney function in our pulp and paper mills, because the level of detection has become so good that you can find really small quantities of anything that our stakeholders might consider to be unwanted. And we need to be able to at least reduce the quantity, if not completely remove it. This is open to all members, no fees to be paid, online, easy to join. If you are interested, there's my colleague Anita who you can contact. We are also looking into the non-wood fibers for various reasons. First of all, there's obviously already a lot of uptake for that, although the quantity compared to the cellulose fibers that we traditionally use is still very small. but we need to have knowledge about that, because whatever we say about non-wood fibers in our sector, is it something positive or is it something negative? It has to be fact-based. And we are now putting together since 2 years this fact base, the knowledge hub, where we want to have informed understanding about the different fibers, also about their availability and their key applications. We have innovation newsletter that you can subscribe to, and it's used for giving all kinds of information, sometimes also for calls for partners that we are getting. CEPI can't be a partner in innovation activities, but companies can be. In the next slide, I will talk a bit more about set plan and then the strategic research agenda of the FTP and then what FTP is for that matter. But, well, FTP stands for Forest-Based Sector Technology Platform. And I noticed that there are no Portuguese members. So maybe one of the things I would want to leave with you is to consider joining FTP directly as a company. You can do that if you are interested. I will come back to why it's important to be in the FTP. So FTP is the joint platform that we have put together 20 years ago in CEPI for the whole forest-based sector to advocate for more funding for our sector in research, development, and innovation. And there's a smart lady in the room who actually is the mother of the FTP. Teresa Presas was at the time CEPI Director General, so my esteemed predecessor, and she's the one who actually made it happen. So she would actually deserve some applause if you still have energy for applauding her for that. And if we want to advance biorefinery concepts or material efficiency or any of the topics we have heard during these days here, it's the source of making sure that we advocate for funding for those activities. The same for set plan, all these key priorities that we have for advancing our decarbonization and getting to the ambitious climate change targets, we can tap on that. EU Innovation Fund is another opportunity that is completely, I would say, unused in our sector. Everybody in this room who is under the ETS schemes is paying for the EU Innovation Fund. But we get so little back to our sector from it. And we are trying to investigate why is that. But in a way, you are giving money for the other sectors to decarbonize, and that shouldn't be the case. To put on your radar screen, the Commission just published the terms of reference for this first piloting for the decarbonized heat auction that is opening somewhere in December. And it's 1 billion euros of EU money. And the idea of this auctioning is that you can have any idea of how to decarbonize heat production for your own factory, your own mill, and the best bid will get the money. So the lowest amount of euros per ton of CO2 avoided will get the bid. Of course, there will be several offers that will be accepted for 1 billion euros worth of total. So make sure that you use that opportunity if you have an idea how to decarbonize heat production in your company and make your bid. So that will open in December. And we have been heavily involved also there to develop these terms of reference for it so that it's suitable for our sector and we can make use of it. But coming back to what Teresa started with Forest-Based Technology Platform, that was 2005. So you can see that it has been able to deliver. It started really exponentially growing in 2019. That happens to be the year when I started then being CEPI Director General, but I don't think it's related, it's just coincidental. What is related is that that's the year when the Green Deal was announced. And you remember what I said, that intrinsically we are quite aligned with Green Deal. And when the EU funding is now aligned with the Green Deal objectives as well, we see more opportunities for our sector to get the EU funding. And also, I would say that the most important factor for this success is that companies have improved their proposals. So when they make proposals for these calls from the European Commission funding, they have actually made increasingly better quality proposals. So we have hit last year this record number of almost 700 million euros of EU funding for the forest-based sector, research, development, innovation in all areas, be it new products, be it process improvements, be it whatever you need it. Well, as I said, this is for the whole of the forest-based sector, but more than half of it comes to pulp and paper industry. And this is also great, and we are very, very happy about that. And there, the same trend that it has increased a lot in the past few years. And I would say that it's because of the aligned needs of getting to the same goals that we have as an industry and what the Commission has in the Green Deal. And it's not actually the full picture because the total funding is even more. So there's other sources. You can use other public funding combined with this research, development, innovation funding. So it's actually even more. And that has increased as well. Well, this may be too detailed, but we are in this forest-based technology platform also having always a vision for what would be the needs for the future. And we can see that we have been very successful in some areas, so sustainable forest management, biodiversity, climate change, building with wood, which is less relevant for us maybe, fiber-based products. Those have been very well funded in the EU in this money that I showed. Least funded is wood production and mobilization, non-wood ecosystem services, efficient use of resources, and job-related projects. And then somewhere in between has been the projects related to circularity and zero waste, diversification, and bioenergy. We are in the process of rewriting the vision document now and the targets and goals we have, and then that will also hopefully help us to get to the better results going further. Since I'm in Portugal, I thought it's good to compare a bit where Portuguese companies are in this, or Portuguese organizations. And it's a bit like the glass is half full and half empty. So you are in the middle class of countries in participation. So there's 2 projects in 2024 where there was a Portuguese project coordinator and 28 projects where you were a partner. That's quite good if you compare, for example, with Austria, which is like a similar important forest-based industry country. But if you look at Belgium or the Netherlands, then you ask yourself that what do they have that makes them so much bigger in these EU-funded projects than Portugal? Shouldn't be the other way around, that these small countries there up north that nobody really knows about, they shouldn't be so important, and maybe Portugal should be more important. I'm not telling you what is right or wrong. You can think about it, but maybe it shows that at least there's still potential for being more active in this EU-funded project, if that's what you think could help. This is my last slide and concluding remarks. So I started by quoting Mr. Draghi, saying that what we have in the EU is hindering ability to scale, innovate, and compete globally. Well, I think we have to do something about that. That was the message about Draghi, by Mr. Draghi himself as well. So first, delete the word hindering and say that we need to have the ability to scale, innovate, and compete globally. And if you think about what I have been now going through in this presentation, there are some elements that hopefully would at least incrementally help us going that way. So first is that there's recognition growing for our sector. People start understanding that maybe we have solutions. Maybe we are not part of the problem, but we can be part of the solution and be a key sector in that. The policy is changing. Competitiveness is clearly now understood to be important. If they know what to do about it, that's another question, but also it's our responsibility to advise the politicians to say that this is what we need for competitiveness. And bioeconomy is now firmly on the agenda, and hopefully our sector increasingly so. And we are building the future. We have these fantastic innovations from our sector and a lot of interesting research and development happening, as we have been hearing in this Tecnicelpa conference. And funding is increasing, so if you have ideas, there's support for it. And with that, I think we can have elements that give us the ability to scale, to innovate, and compete globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jori, for your nice presentation. You are a very good friend of Tecnicelpa, and we appreciate that you are with us. Okay? Now we have 10 minutes for questions. So please raise your hand, say the name and the company, and put the questions to Jori. Okay?
Hello, Jori. Nice to see you again. Gabriel Souza from Altri Group. Very nice presentation. Thanks for the oversight of the political conditions in the past and going forward. You mentioned here the clean industrial deal, where bioeconomy has something to give to Europe. I have not read in full and in detail, but you mentioned there's a lot of promotion of new feedstocks, new materials, new products. But what about existing products, existing processes, existing industries? Do we foresee that there'll be sufficient and additional support for already existing industries from which a platform can be built to support these new products and new processes?
What I've been trying to use as an easy to understand metaphor in Brussels for the politicians and civil servants we meet is that, yes, we have these startups, but these startups have rich parents, and it's the traditional pulp and paper industry. So you shouldn't throw the grandfather out with the bathing water, nor with the baby, of course. So I think that's been understood, and what they wrote about here, maybe the word new refers to the new compared to the fossil economy. So alternatives to what used to be done with fossil depletable materials can be now done with the same processes and same materials, same mills that we have in the current pulp and paper industry. And this element of hopefully getting this pulp and paper action plan by the Commission would also further then advance these ideas that you put very well, that we need to be able to scale up also in the traditional industry of ours.
Thank you.
Hi, Jori. Thanks for your interesting and challenging presentation. Carlos Neto, sorry, from Region Navigator. I was a little bit surprised by the relevance that you gave in your presentation, your slide, to non-wood fibers. Can you comment on that, since we have all the issues related with land usage competing with agriculture, food, non-food? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, it's still, of course, and I think it will be very small fraction of the total of the fiber supply to our industry. But those that are using it are very vocal. So they make big number of using non-wood, sometimes saying that they didn't kill any trees in the process of getting to this product, whilst others say that, well, it's okay to have these fibers, but how about recycling? Will they be then a problem in the recycling process at the end of the life cycle? And then others are saying that, well, who cares, there's not availability of it. So there are so many claims, both negative and positive, that we thought that, well, the best CEPI can do is to create this knowledge hub where we try to get to the facts and then try to support our members, whatever they say about it, to base it on facts. But as such, of course, CEPI doesn't have any position on non-wood fibers, but they are reality.
Yeah, since I have this... Diga? É só para falar. Thank you, Jori, and congratulations for this big turnaround, if I may say so. What would be CEPI's wishful thinking for the action plan that you're talking about? Feasible wishful thinking, of course, feasible.
Well, there are several things, of course. So we have to be understood in our also bit unique situation where we are in the energy issues, both the generator but also consumer of energy. And then that's creating sometimes difficulties because we may not be understood in Brussels. So that's something that we want to advance, so being able to be this prosumer in energy, in clean energy, and advance that. In raw material supply, we need to have some clarity for what is the possibilities in mobilization of wood. In general, that's linked to also to LULUCF discussions that are now happening, also in relation to the 2040 targets. That has to be clarified. So how can LULUCF be actually a support, which is also something that the International Panel for Climate Change has been saying for all the time, from the first report, that you have to have active forest management that is including harvesting and using the harvested wood then for smart activities that is actually helping in substitution by avoiding emissions in the first place. So all that is somehow there in bits and pieces, and then maybe in this action plan we can put it all more together. And then there are a lot of issues about trade, for example, where we hope that when the Commission is now negotiating for the special sectors that would go back to the zero tariffs with the cross-Atlantic trade, that maybe we can be also advancing that wish in the action plan, and many others. I think it has to be as concrete as possible, as measurable as possible, and make it something that the Commission has feeling like they own it. We have in the past written some great action plans by the industry for the policymakers, and that's good. But if the policymakers write it themselves, which would be this case, hopefully the case, then maybe they have more the ownership, and they would also action it more.
Some more questions or no more? I have here two questions for you, Jori. I have here two questions. The first one is about recruitment, getting people to our business that nowadays is becoming more and more difficult. And we know that CEPI has a program to promote the image of our sector. Can you tell us a bit what are you doing?
That's another great example of what we can do with partnerships. So since many, many years, already during Teresa's time, we were part of this social dialogue together with labor unions at the European level. And what is nice about talking with labor unions at the EU level is that we don't need to talk about the difficult things like salaries and the length of vacation or whatever it is. We talk about the future of the industry together. And that's also something that I would say that in the past 5 years may be catalyzed by the potential risks of this Green Deal regulation or over-regulation, that the relationship with the labor union at the European level has improved a lot. And we do projects together to really support the future of the industry and recruiting people, increasing the attractiveness of the sector, and making it easier for people to find our sector when they choose their studies or when they choose their careers after the studies is one thing we do. And then we have some ongoing projects on that, some very practical, simple tools that seem to be very effective where people are using it, that are available for all, and then that's one thing. And then we are looking into also working together with those institutions that are training people, so basically after graduation studies to make people want to specialize, whatever scientific studies they did before, that they could then have easy interest to specialize in pulp and paper.
Okay, thank you, Jori. Thank you also, thank you, Jori, to join us. So we will make a break now, 20 minutes, and please be back here at 4:25, because then we will have the CEOs round table and the forum, okay? So take the break, and there is a coffee break, and then also see them.